Following on this episode of Law Weekly, a conversation with the convener, Duty Solicitors Network, and former chairman of the Ikorodu branch of the Nigerian Bar Association, Bayo Akinlade. Duty Solicitors Network is a network of lawyers both in public and private practice who volunteer their time to visit police detention facilities and accompany magistrates as part of efforts to ensure the smooth administration of criminal justice. We talk about what justice would look like for the female lawyer Bolanle Raheem, who was shot by the policeman on Christmas Day, and indeed other victims of extrajudicial killings. Also showing on the program, highlights from the unveiling of the public presentation of the compendium of 100 high-profile corruption cases in Nigeria as at November 2022, plus a recap of the top trending legal stories in the news. Hello and welcome to the program. I am Shola Shuyeli. As proof of its demonstration that there will be no cover-up in the investigation and prosecution of the persons involved in the murder of the late lawyer, Mrs. Bolanle Raheem, who was killed on Christmas Day, Lagos State has filed a one-count charge of murder against DSP Jambi Vandi, who was said to have unlawfully killed the deceased by shooting her in the chest. The Attorney General of Lagos, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Moyosore Onigbanjo, who personally led the prosecution to the Chief Magistrate Court in Yaba, which granted his request and ordered the remand of the defendant at the Ikoyi Correctional Center to allow the police conclude its investigations. The Nigerian Bar Association on its part had said it would monitor the trial and seek compensation for the family of Mrs. Raheem. Now, to get more perspective on what more could be done by everyone concerned, I spoke to the convener of the Duty Solicitors Network and former chairman, NBA Ikorodu branch, Mr. Bayo Akinlade, who was part of the NBA team which met with the police authorities and the family of the deceased. He shared some of his observations on the killing and the subsequent visits.
Well, the bar actually, especially Lagos branch, had done well by immediately going to pay a visit to the police station, Ajiwe police station. However, the outcomes of that visit worries me a lot because it was more about passing the buck. The DPO telling us that all necessary information that we need should now be directed to the to Panti, and of course we later found out that even that it was not even a correct information, and then we had to go to the Commissioner of Police, who also gave us audience. In regards as to what the NBA wants to do, I think the NBA is probably not looking at it in the right angle. I think that what happened to Bolanle is a catalyst for more visible engagement by the Bar Association in terms of the administration of criminal justice. The issues around police brutality and indiscriminate arrest and detention, and roadblocks, or the issue about roadblocks. So what NBA wants to do by joining in the criminal prosecution, for me, is not something that I would easily praise. I think they should pay more attention into doing more basic work in terms of police-citizen relationship, and empowering the police through training and other issues, and let the DPP do their work in terms of further investigation and prosecution of the case. In fact, it's best that we even just stay out of it to see how effective, the issues around prosecution and of cases go. And there's a lot of problems there as well. So whether we participate or not, to me, is not even the issue. It's the underlying problems in terms of what surrounds policing and trying to avoid incidences that cause the deaths of Nigerian citizens.
I hear what you say about the inadequacy of what the NBA is trying to do. I've also read your opinion about titled When Justice Arrives Too Late. You've said a lot of things that resonate with a lot of people. You said that the justice Bolanle needed was not to have been killed in the first place. The justice Bolanle needed was, to not be terrified of the police, was to have her still remain as wife to her husband and a mother to her children. And that the justice we all need is to have all our leaders and institutions of government respect the citizens and uphold the rule of law. So I'm thinking, what else do you think the Nigerian Bar Association should be doing to give us this justice that we all really need?
the NBA should have immediately activated all its committees on human rights committees across the country. The first thing that they should have done was to come up with a strategy for engagement so that things like this do not happen just off the curb. So one of the things that these human rights organizations, committees can do, for instance, in Lagos, we have 5 different branches of the Nigerian Bar Association. All of them have human rights committees. All of them have at least up to collectively 200 lawyers can be activated immediately under these committees to go into the police stations as a show of solidarity and strength and provide pro bono services, not to protest, not to make a big deal out of anything, but just to show the Nigerian police force that, look, we're also interested in justice, we're interested in community policing, we're interested in the safety and security of human lives, and we're also interested in securing people's fundamental human rights so that they feel that not only that we need safety and security, but we need to know that we are citizens. We need to know that the police works for us, not the other way around. We shouldn't be afraid of them.
Talking about the police, we all heard the first PPRO live on Channels TV talk about the process and the procedures of the police, that the IG first has to recommend the suspension or dismissal of the officer involved, which has been done in this case. I'm wondering, what are your thoughts about that procedure and that process? And also, the first PPRO went on to talk about the fact that sometimes the family of the victim sometimes delay the processes of the police. He said that in some instances, they could say that, well, prosecution will not bring back a person who is dead. So just compensate us and let us move on. And then the person who is charged, it will not be fair to charge that person if compensation has been involved, has exchanged hands, and that it would amount to double jeopardy. This thinking of the police, I'm just wondering, how are you reading this? Especially, this is a criminal offense we're talking about. Is that kind of thinking even relevant, considering the fact that it's a criminal offense that is involved in this case?
Yeah, so that is an unfortunate statement. And like I'd opined some time ago, that if it was left up to me, I would seek the resignation of the Commissioner of Police, the DPO, the IG Zone 2, and the IG himself. Because anything a policeman does, if you tell me that he's on his own, I get worried. Because it's a paramilitary structure where there's one command, hierarchy in a pyramid kind of structure. So telling me, or what the first PPRO was saying to me was, this is actual fact of what happens. But I didn't expect him to be making that kind of statement to Nigerians, because we all know that in a case like this, and in almost every criminal case, where there is no provision for mediation or restitution, in a case where somebody has lost their lives, I wouldn't expect that the government will be suggesting, or the police will be suggesting, a criminal procedure that will compel the police not to pursue the investigation or the prosecution of such a case. But we all know that not everyone knows what their work is, even within the police force. But that is not the case. In law, that is not the case. The Attorney General will prosecute if he has substantial evidence that a crime has been committed. On their internal mechanisms, on the issue about, first of all, dismissing or suspending the officer, that's their own internal procedures, and that shouldn't really concern us per se. It will only concern us if they weren't strictly following the laws in those professions. And once something like this happens, in better climes, people, the leaders just step aside. And we know that once a policeman, does something that is embarrassing to the police and to the state, because when you say a gun has gone off from the hands of a policeman, or a policeman shoots an unarmed citizen, You are literally telling us that we're in a police state and that whoever holds the gun holds your future. And that's the very dangerous way of thinking. I cannot leave my house thinking, or I cannot even challenge a policeman who is holding a gun. I find it very, very disturbing that I have to obey somebody or be compelled to do something, or it may be illegal because the person that is telling me to do it holds a gun. That's a very dangerous feeling to have. And this is what NSAS was all about in the first place. People got tired of just this brutal, demonistic killings of individuals because somebody has a gun. So it is a very dangerous thing for us, position to hold. And I hope that the first PPRO will take further legal advice before coming to the public to make statements about prosecutorial aspects of criminal cases. My concern is that, is there an independent investigation going on aside from the one that the police is conducting? It will be very important for the Attorney General to consider an independent investigative team outside the purview and the authority of the Nigerian police to do this job.
Again and again, we hear about irresponsible policing. Why do you think that the judiciary has not used this to send out a strong message that, the judiciary will not condone this? Why do you think that the judiciary appears to be helpless in dealing with this menace of irresponsible policing?
Well, maybe because the police appears to be a separate institution out of anybody's control. Maybe that's one of the things. And then the second thing is that the judiciary doesn't have its own police. If the judiciary had its own police, like the sheriffs that we have, that can enforce the orders of the judiciary independent of the police, then perhaps maybe the judiciary won't be too helpless. But there are many court decisions where the judiciary has maybe ordered the arrest of a policeman, and we saw one the other day where we read that even the IGP, I think, or the IG was asked to, was ordered, they had ordered his arrest, or DSS or something. The judiciary is not playing its role very well. And perhaps the whole independent issue is part of it. But I would be thinking that the judiciary can make certain pronouncements and reiterate on those pronouncements in its everyday cost of doing justice. Right from the magistrate's court level, we see a timidity from the bench that they are afraid to put the police to task. Even when the police bring in frivolous charges for prosecution, frivolous cases that have no evidence or have no proof of evidence, you still find the judiciary tolerating some of these cases, and they have no answer to what the police is doing. Perhaps we should now reiterate to our judges and magistrates to seriously start thinking of doing their jobs properly in terms of even making direct complaints to the police and hierarchy about the behavior of some policemen, some IPOs, some prosecutors. Perhaps when we start having high-level disciplinary actions taken against senior officers, perhaps maybe something will change. Like I said earlier, if this kind of behavior from the police, this shooting, whether it was accidental or not, would cost the IG his job. After many years in the police force, you get to the position of the IG, you don't want to mess up, or you don't want somebody else to mess it up for you. But if we can have some kind of structure that puts the responsibility of a misbehavior by a junior officer on the senior officer, which ought to be the case, then perhaps we will not have this level of police impunity in our country. But now somebody does something like the first PPRO said, he said the man has been arrested and detained. His fellow team members are not detained. The DPO in charge is not detained. The person who gave him the gun has not been detained. The person who signed out the weapon has not been detained. The manufacturer of the weapon or the people who have those kind of, who did the weapons check. Because if you claim that the gun just went off, then we are talking about a serious manufacturing problem, or that the gun is too old. Why is nobody looking into that? What is the police procurement system like that you could have a gun on the streets that can just go off? Nobody is asking the real questions. So in this case, if the IG himself would know that he would be removed, or the AIG knows he will be removed for an infraction of his junior officers, then I think there will be more discipline within the police force. But as I see it now, people just telling me he's in detention doesn't mean anything to me when it comes to policing in Nigeria.
Welcome back. Human and Environmental Development Agenda Header Resource Center has asked Nigerian lawmakers to complete the review of the country's constitution or face legal action. HEDA identified gaps in the constitution which hinders effective reduction of corruption in the country and urged professional and other regulatory bodies to do more to sanction its members who are found culpable. These and more were the discussions at the public presentation of the 6th edition of the compendium on 100 high-profile corruption cases in Nigeria.
It's a place where you can go that is not a...
Human and Environmental Development Agenda Header Resource Center is a non-governmental organization and non-partisan human rights and development league. Amongst other things, the center conducts research, policy advocacy, training, as well as citizens' awareness and mobilization on core development issues, including human rights and public sector accountability. It's for these reasons and more that it has gathered this group of key stakeholders drawn from law enforcement agencies, the judiciary, representatives of civil society, the media, and others for the public presentation of the 6th edition of its compendium of 100 high-profile corruption cases in Nigeria. Chairing the event is a recently retired Justice of the Federal High Court, Justice Taiwo Taiwo.
Corruption is well known to us. I don't have to go into it. It stares us in the face every day on the streets, especially when we see those children who are meant to be in school out of school. The roads are bad. Not that we don't have money in Nigeria, we do. But then this money is end up in private pockets.
A foremost prosecutor with the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Rotimi Oyedepo, then proceeds to review the compendium. He also speaks to the challenges impeding the expeditious determination of some of the cases listed in the book.
The absence of special court to try these offenses. The prosecution of corruption cases is in conventional court, often delayed due to volume of cases handled by the court and the priority that is accorded to some of these specific high-profile cases. The transfer of judges and their elevation to Supreme Court and retirement also affect the smooth prosecution of corruption cases. In most cases, where judges are transferred to other divisions of the court, cases tremendously suffer and often start de novo. On rare occasion, fiat are issued to some judges to continue adjudicating on cases that are part-time. In that situation, the cases move at snail pace.
Other stakeholders also weighed in on possible solutions for dealing with corruption.
Most of the time, we tend to do a kind of blame game. This person will be putting the blame on another person. These are the people that are corrupt. These are the people that are corrupt. But I just want to point it out to us that if you look at our society today, this corruption victim is in every sector of society. And if you want to fight it, that means all of us must be ready and be prepared.
When you make this
business of fighting corruption and everybody affair, that we are all guilty, we all have to. You make it a nobody affair. You end up by saying, well, since I'm not perfect, I can't point a finger. And yet we need people who are not perfect. We all have to, the fingers have to be pointed. It may be that in the Bible, Jesus said, let he who is without sin cast the first stone, but we can't afford that luxury. We can't afford that luxury. So even those of us who are with sin must be in a position to cast stones at those whom we perceive to be with bigger sin. So I want to say that perhaps this absolutist approach is not going to help us.
That God will arrest endemic corruption in Nigeria.
The high point of the event was the public presentation of the compendium. Heather says it is unfortunate that many of those saddled with public offices are corrupt. The organization, however, restated its commitment to the war against graft by pledging to continue the publication of the compendium, to remind the public of the corruption cases still lingering in the courts, and to discourage others from engaging in corrupt practices.
This current National Assembly should not go away without completing the constitutional reform that they started. And I think perhaps we should be looking at possibly suing this assembly and the several other assemblies that will start the process, spend billions of our money in the name of doing constitutional reforms and abandon the project before, because we are in dire need of a constitutional reform.
And just before we go, let's quickly do a recap of some of the top trending stories from the courtrooms.
We begin with the report that the Federal Capital Territory High Court Abuja has quashed a move by the DSS to charge the Governor of Central Bank, Godwin Emefiele, with counts of terrorism and economic crime of national security dimension. Justice Mariam Hassan also barred the DSS from arresting, inviting, or detaining Mr. Emefiele. The court declared the terrorism allegations against the CBN governor as vindictive, callous, oppressive, void, and of no effect. In a judgment on the originating summons filed by the Incorporated Trustees of Forum for Accountability and Good Leadership to enforce the fundamental rights of Mr. Emefiele, Justice Hassan also restrained the DSS from further harassing or threatening to detain him. The court relied on the orders of the Federal High Court delivered by the Chief Judge, Justice John Soho, declaring that the continuous harassment and intimidation of the CBN governor was a breach to his right to liberty, as interferes with his function as governor of the CBN. Also in Abuja, the Federal High Court has fixed January 27, 2023 for ruling on the suit challenging the candidacy of Asiwaju Bola Tinubu, the presidential candidate of the ruling All Progressives Congress in the 2023 general elections. Justice Binta Nyako fixed the date after lawyers adopted their processes and presented the arguments for and against the suit. A group, the Incorporated Trustees of Kingdom Human Rights Foundation International, had sued the Independent National Electoral Commission chairman, the APC, and Asiwaju Tinubu as first to third defendants, seeking the disqualification of Asiwaju Tinubu from contesting the 2023 presidential election. The group premised its position on the failure of the APC to comply with the mandatory provisions of Section 91, subsection 3 of the Electoral Act 2022, which stipulates that a political party shall not receive any contribution of cash or kind exceeding 50 million naira without showing the source of the contribution to INEC, amongst others. The former Lagos State Governor, in a preliminary objection filed by his lead counsel, Lateef Fagbemi, has urged the court to dismiss the suit on grounds of incompetence. In Lagos, the State Attorney General, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Moyosori Onigbanjo, has appeared at the Chief Magistrate Court in Yaba area in connection with the alleged murder of Mrs. Bolanle Raheem. The AG's office had filed a one-count charge against the defendant, ASP Drambi Vandi. The defendant was charged with the unlawful killing of Bolanle Raheem by shooting the deceased in the chest, contrary to Section 223 of the Criminal Law of Lagos State 2015. The Attorney General also applied for the remand of the defendant to allow the police conclude his investigations into the matter. Magistrate Adeola Olatubosun granted the request for remand and ordered that the case file be duplicated and sent to the Director of Public Prosecution, Dr. Jide Martins, for legal advice. She adjourned to January 30, 2023 to await the legal advice. In Ekiti, the Governorship Election Petition Tribunal sitting in Ado-Ekiti has upheld the victory of the candidate of the All Progressives Congress, Biodun Oyebanji, in the June governorship election in the state. The three-man tribunal, chaired by Justice Wilfred Bochi, held that the allegations of electoral rigging, vote trading, and procedural violations raised by the candidate of Social Democratic Party, Segun Oni, are vague and unspecific. The tribunal equally struck out the request for the disqualification of the deputy governorship candidate of the APC for alleged certificate forgery, saying the issue was not brought up within the expected 21 days period legally allowed. The petitioner has indicated that the judgment will be challenged at the appeal court.
And that's the program for today. If you missed any part of it, you can find it on past episodes on our YouTube channel. Do also give us feedback via any of our social media platforms. I'm Shola Shoyele. Happy New Year.